So impressive. Marissa Mayer will be back next year. She just had a baby, as you heard, and she is also just taking her job. So, but she sends her regards. She saw the post-it as well, creation over there. Next up, Steven Guggenheimer, who is the corporate vice president of developer and platform group at Microsoft, and David Kirkpatrick, that doesn't need any introduction anymore, but he has a great conference called Techonomy Media in the US. Welcome back.
Thanks, Louis.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Good morning. Steve Guggenheimer, or Googs, as he's known at Microsoft, he's been there for 18 years plus, and he is chief evangelist, head of developer relations, having just taken that job within the last 2 months, and previously he'd been head of OEM relations. So he went from dealing with all the hardware makers who are, buying Windows and installing it and all the other stuff that they do, to now reaching out to people much more like yourselves, trying to get apps on Windows 8, basically. That's his job, which is obviously a big job. For a lot of reasons. It is fashionable to write off Microsoft, as I'm sure it doesn't need to be said to people in this room, in this community. But I think it's easy to forget the things that Microsoft still does and does amazingly well. I mean, the obvious one of their extraordinary penetration in business computing and enterprise, still unsurpassed by anybody. Then, it's easy to forget the stuff they have, Skype, Connect, Xbox Live, Yammer. They even have a 4x return on their Facebook investment, which was much ridiculed at the time that it happened. So, and also, today we see that even companies like Google and Facebook are talked about occasionally, or more than occasionally, as in a precarious position, because everything changes really fast in technology now. So Microsoft's longevity, and it's to be such an amazing money machine for so long, is obviously intrinsically impressive. But its stock has been, not terribly big performer for some time, and the reality is its products still have a feeling and a reputation of stodginess. So that's the challenge that you have to get over. So why should we care about Microsoft now and Windows 8?
Well, I think I'd start with just opportunity. Microsoft's been around a long time, and part of how our business is built has been through partners. You talked about hardware earlier. There's 1,500 devices that have been certified for Windows 8. There'll be hundreds of millions of Windows PCs/tablets that will sell in the next year. That's more than iOS devices, that's more than Android devices. So just in terms of eyeballs in a marketplace, it's a pretty good starting point if you're developing an app. I think the other thing we've worked on is, when you think about the opportunity, is how do we enable the most monetization for our partners? And there we've tried to, I'll say, maximize flexibility. If you build an application, you want to use our commerce engine, it works in 200 countries, 100 languages roughly, we'll pay in 18 or so. But more importantly, you can use your own commerce engine. So we'll pay 30%, pay you 70%, and we'll keep 30%. And if you get to $25,000, we'll pay 80%, which is more than anybody else. But if you want to keep 100% and use your own payment method, you can. And that's a nice difference. There's a startup in France here I met with yesterday who are doing a video service similar to Netflix. Those are very low margin businesses. And the notion of having to sort of give some of that money to us or anyone else, it would have kept them from starting the business. But the fact that they can keep all of the revenue, they like that. If you want to do in-ad advertising, you can use our engine, you can use your engine. If you want to use PayPal, they were up here just a second ago. They're doing the API set so you can use PayPal in your app. So if you want a lot of eyeballs, essentially literally hundreds of millions of devices, if you want to use existing skills, maybe your JavaScript and HTML5, maybe your XAML and C#, maybe your C++, if you want to access the broadest set of commerce tools, and then finally, the variety of hardware systems. We saw the Nokia phone up here a second ago. A lot of the work that's done on the PC translates to the phone. I just think overall it's opportunity.
Okay, so to summarize what you just said, it's that the ecosystem is huge. Yeah. the facilities are incredibly diverse and capable behind the scenes, but you didn't really say it's going to be better than, you know, an iPhone or Android. I mean, is that basically your argument, that it's good enough that it can compete, or are you telling me that what is the case that you can really have a better phone, better tablets than what Apple's making and what Google is making and licensing,
Well, I would, first off, I would say the experience is the marriage of hardware and software. And the ability to have diversity across both and yet make them work really well together is what allows it to be exceptional and differentiated. And I'd say we've taken a differentiated viewpoint there. There are 1,500 devices, again, that have been certified on Windows 8 already. You know, the Apple model or the iOS model says, hey, there's a set of devices and you can write for those. But that's the only set of devices. There aren't devices that are sort of capable of transforming into a variety of different ways, be both a tablet and a PC, be a big tablet, be a small tablet, be a device that the cover flips around, be a device that has different sensors in it. And know as a developer that your apps are going to run on all of those. So the ability to have diversity in the hardware and then marry the software to it. And we have a very, very broad set of developer base. We have all the ability to connect to web services with the work we've been doing in the cloud, and there was a good conversation this morning on that. The ability to take advantage of whether it's SkyDrive for storage, or whether it's the ability to take advantage of all of the web services, the ability to do things across phone and PC. I like the fact that the UI has some consistency across phone, tablet, and PC.
Well, nobody knows better than you what's coming in terms of the hardware, because that's what you've been doing for quite a few years, and you're deeply knowledgeable about that, which makes you a good choice for this job, and I'm sure Ballmer was very excited to convince you to do it. But you're still not saying that Windows phones are going to be more amazing. I mean, because I think, isn't there and the ads kind of try to say that, but I think people in this room, frankly, would be generally skeptical about that. So I guess what I want to ask you to tell us is, what is the most amazing stuff we're going to see as consumers, as employees, on these phones that we can't do, and tablets, because you're doing tablets.
Yep.
Obviously, you've got your own product in the Surface. That's a big deal. But what are we going to be able to do as consumers and employees that we can't do with the other products? I mean, what is the differentiated selling proposition?
I think the differentiated for the individual, it is the personalized sort of setup for you. Instead of having a sea of icons, like I can go fill up a screen of icons, having a personalized system, whether it's a desktop or a phone screen, that's constantly updating you on what your friends are doing, what's going on whatever website you're tracking, what's going on at LeWeb. Having that customized screen, and then having the live tile so the information is actually updating regularly, and then having the form factors that you can desire, whether it's a very beautiful Nokia phone that we saw this morning, whether it's an HTC, Samsung. Right. So having price point choice, having, I'll say choice of device, and then having the ability to make it yours, which is what or sort of have it meld to your use as opposed to you having to fit to that. That's really what we strive for.
I don't think that's not nothing either. Because actually, I think that the live tiles are very cool. People I know who have Windows phones, which frankly are few, but the ones who do love it. Right. And I think you have an opportunity. I really do think that Windows 8 is a breakthrough for Microsoft and a huge opportunity. But clearly there's a perceptual hurdle you have to get over, which is why you're spending this unbelievable amount in advertising. I mean, you can't watch any TV show in the US anyway and not see ads for Windows 8 and Surface, and they're good ads too. So, but I mean, I love to think about the cool stuff that's coming that we haven't really fully recognized yet. Google Glass is something. Robert Scoble is here. He was telling me, how he believes that is a form factor of the future in some fashion. Is that your opinion, as a guy who's just been working with the hardware guys all this time and now is really deeply immersed in the software opportunity? What is the next phase beyond a little rectangle of glass we carry in our pocket? Or is there one?
Well, I think the interesting thing about hardware is it's the growing choice. I always use the analogy of the auto industry. When cars started, there was this thing on the right that makes the car go forward, the thing on the left stops, and the thing in the middle turns it left and right. And you say, okay, once that's done, well, then there's only a few cars you need. Well, it turns out, over decades, there's literally hundreds and thousands of models. We're not going to go to one device or one style. You're going to go to every shape, size, color of glass, since you use that term, that you can imagine. Some people are going to want a 2-inch, some people 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 27. I might want ones that are flexible. I might want one with a keyboard. I might want one with a pen. And the nice thing about the hardware side of this is it's going to continue to innovate. We've tried to allow as much diversity as we can today, and yet this holiday be interesting. Go out another year. Give all of the hardware manufacturers a year with Windows 8. You'll see literally thousands of devices, all shapes and sizes, so that everybody in this room could pick the thing they want. And if I do industrial work and I want to build a hardened tablet that sort of gets stuck on the back of a tank and dropped out of an airplane, you can do that. If I want a super thin and light one, maybe it's flexible, maybe it unrolls. I've seen all kinds of designs. You can build that one. And as developers, the nice thing for everybody in this room is when I build an app, it runs on all of those. It runs smoothly and seamlessly on any of the designs that will come out. And you can't say that about all the other operating systems.
So you can pretty much guarantee that somebody who writes an app, it's going to run on all the devices. And because that's something with the Android ecosystem people are very worried about, obviously.
Right. That's sort of the promise of Windows. There's sort of three approaches to this in sort of the hardware-software world. There's the Apple approach, which is we'll build all of the hardware, and therefore all of the software will run. But then you have somewhat of a limited choice for hardware, and as a hardware developer, you're not really building much. You have the Android, or the Google choice, which is you can build any platform you want, and you can actually add more hardware into it. But then as a software developer, you're never quite sure what they've added, and so you're not sure your app will run. We try and find that balance between both, which is having enough definition of the hardware that your applications will run, and that is the promise of Windows. And yet have the diversity of form factors, whether it's phones or PCs, that you have choice in price and style.
Well, clearly that involves trade-offs for the hardware makers because there's certain things they can't do. But and as the guy who was talking to them for the last few years, does that frustrate them, or is that something you feel that they completely are fine with? I mean, I would think there's some are going to say, hey, I really want to do more, and I'm going to go with Android. And we've certainly seen Samsung in particular, which has got devices with you, but is making its big play on Android at the moment.
Well, I'll use the tablet as the example because that's sort of the bridge between the two. I think on one hand, the initial thought is, hey, Microsoft, you may not be giving us all we want, so we're going to go with that choice. But then as they figure out, you're doing more hardware, and it takes a lot of support, and you're doing more of the software to build the drivers and do the extra work, turns out that gets pretty painful. So most of the hardware manufacturers, they don't actually enjoy going to other platforms. Part of what they pushed hard on for Windows 8 was, give us the touch capability, give us the experience so we can build these devices. We want to participate, but we really like the Windows model because as a hardware manufacturer, a hardware designer, we like the ability to have sort of things that we know will work and have the ability to work with you because they would say we're a good partner, and then be able to deliver the devices that we know the end users want. We should, when you talk about Android, there's sort of two devices. There's, Amazon Kindle Fire,
on the tablet,
and then there's the Samsung, and then there's lots and lots of devices that don't sell a lot. If you're an OEM building a lot of different devices that don't sell very much, super hard business.
How big of a potential partner is Samsung for you?
Samsung's a great partner. They do phones with us. They do phenomenal, beautiful PCs. The Series 9, they did if you went to Build 2 years ago, they did the first slate for us that we use for the developer kit. They do TVs. We do some work together with the TV. And so they're a phenomenal partner, and at the same time, they do a lot of their own things.
I mean, it's funny because, nobody would have guessed a couple of years ago that the phone world, it would really kind of come down to Apple versus Samsung, but that's increasingly the way that it's feeling. But, so if you could but Samsung has this odd sort of, mercenary quality where they'll just go with whatever people want to buy. And so presumably they're a huge opportunity for you guys, in your old job especially, to get to swing, in effect.
Well, I think, look, Samsung runs a very large business. They sell chips, they sell glass, they sell all the components to build phones and PCs, and they build phones and PCs. So they're sort of an interesting player in the hardware space, and they do a great job. They're a great partner for us. I think the interesting one on that notion is you sort of mentioned Apple and Samsung. Go talk to most of the operators in the world. They sort of don't really want just two people.
I wanted to bring up the operators anyway, so go to that.
Well, so the truth is they want to have choice in their sort of thought of the ecosystem. So they're really rooting in many ways for Windows to be that third platform. Because when you look around and you say, I've got Apple and I've got Samsung, then I've got a lot of their Android devices that fragment. They say, okay, where does that third ecosystem come from? Where does that choice come from? And so you'll notice that the operators, I live in the US, so I won't speak to Europe right now, there's more advertising on Windows Phone 8 for this holiday than you would have seen last holiday.
But isn't it, I mean, just to dwell on Samsung for a minute, isn't that one of their brilliant things they're doing, that from the operators might want a third choice, but if Windows 8 starts to really take off, which I do think is a possibility, Samsung can just go right there, and it doesn't really help the operators in that respect, right? I mean, they'll still be negotiating with that colossus.
Well, so it does two things. I think you're right. Samsung plays that game or that approach very well. They do a good job of saying, hey, we're going to be good at Android, and we're going to be good at Windows, and we're going to do our own thing. We're going to be good at BADA. So they're pretty smart about trying to play all the angles. If Windows takes off, the difference there is there are other branded operators or phone manufacturers. You saw Nokia up here today, who can then go in and be able to participate. And
that's true.
Nokia, phenomenal designs this morning.
I wouldn't write them out with Marco there, especially.
Exactly.
He's an amazing guy. Many other people that are amazing there. Okay, operators, so in a way, are a key ally for you. That's one of the things you were saying, that they're really, in a way, on the side of Windows 8 because they just want more things to get bidding against each other for their business so they can get prices down.
I would say they're on the side of the operators, and Windows 8 can help them be on that side.
All right. CIOs are clearly another huge ally of yours. Talk a little bit, I mean, there's a lot of reasons why, but tell us a few of the reasons.
Well, look, if you're a CIO, you care about, I want to give consumers choice. People talk about consumerization of IT, but darn it, my job is to protect the company. And if data is getting out that shouldn't be getting out, if the banking data is getting out or HR information, et cetera, then I'm likely going to get in trouble. Microsoft works pretty hard on building a platform that allows for very good security. And so the notion of, Microsoft, can you build devices, really cool tablets that my end users will love and that I can offer them as an alternative to the iPad, because the iPad has entered into some of the CEO or some of the marketing discussions. If you can offer me something like that through your OEM partners, then I really am interested in that, because my applications will run, my security will work, my management works. I can do all the things with that device that I can do to protect the corporation and enable the end users. And crud, I got a lot of code back here that I probably used before. I've got a lot of applications internal. And if you can make cool design and get me some other stuff, I'm very interested in that. And I hear that all the time. Like, you go around and show off some of the new slates that are coming, whether it's our Surface or whether it's the Samsung slate or whether it's the Asus slate or any of the others that are coming, Lenovo, et cetera. They really like those devices.
Well, with Surface and Windows 8, you're a lot closer to cool than you were before, and I think the cool factor has gone out of enterprise computing up until recently, and that's been a real problem because they're having to deal with iOS stuff and a lot of Android stuff that they didn't necessarily want to deal with. So, good for you. Good luck on that one. But let's talk about a few other things. Internet of Things. It's the theme of this conference. How does that fit into the Windows 8's pitch?
Well, I would just say, first off, Internet of Things is beautiful. There'll be 1 billion processors sold this year that are not in phones, they're not in PCs, they're in smart devices. And whether it's handheld computing, whether it's point-of-sale systems, whether it's digital signage, whether it's ATMs, whether it's cars, we've had an embedded operating system for 10+ years. And so, Ford Sync, 5 million of those sold already.
And that's one of the most successful embedded operating systems.
It is. You go into
the most? For higher-end devices, it probably is for
in certain markets, for sure. If you go into McDonald's and you're using the digital signage outside to order food, odds are good that's a Windows system.
I know United Airlines was, and I was flying over here, I noticed
Exactly, the ATM network. So I think, again, as a developer, you can think of, hey, here's a cool consumer app, or hey, there's a great phone app. But there's a whole world of commercial applications and systems that marry together, where you have embedded hardware, and they're all unique, different devices, and yet all of the code you build for Windows will work on those.
But even those devices are not Windows 8 per se. But is it still a case to do Windows 8, and why?
Right. Well, some of your code will run because it is a form of Windows 8. The new next generation of Windows Embedded coming will be a form of Windows 8.
It will be a form of Windows 8.
Right, with the exception of the very, very smallest devices where we will still use our CE kernel for those. But in that world, we have all of your code in the sense of there'll be code that can be reused, and more importantly, your skills. So if whatever you're writing your code in and whatever learning you've had around Windows, that will be applicable to that embedded world. And so while not all of your code will be perfectly portable and not all of the APIs are there, you'll know how to work with it, and a number will be. And so that's a great starting point if you're building a device.
Okay, a lot of the things you've just been saying about Windows and the next version of Windows Embedded, et cetera, are testimony to the success of Steven Sinofsky in bringing order to the and sort of a logic to the Windows ecosystem that somewhat lacked in the previous versions. Seriously lacked, by many people's opinion. But now he's forced out. What does that do to the shape of Microsoft? What was your reaction to Sinofsky leaving? How big a deal is it for the company?
Yeah. First off, Stephen, phenomenal visionary. A lot of some of the things we're seeing in terms of Windows 8 and the entire ecosystem are from his vision. He is a phenomenal shipper. He ships products, whether it's Office or Windows. You use the term forced out. I won't use that term. I'll say Stephen, left and decided to leave at a time.
That wasn't a question, though. But
I understand, but I thought I'd do the appropriate piece and make sure I balance that off.
Yes, you can say it.
So look, one of the great things about Microsoft, and many of the large companies that folks will deal with, but I think Microsoft in particular, is we have a great bench. So if you look at the team under Stephen, Julie Larson-Green and John Devon and Antoine LeBlanc and Tammy Reller, they're all still there. And they're all still running the business and they'll work on it. And so we'll miss Stephen. He's phenomenally talented, did some great things. And at the same time, if you're like, gosh, there's a great bench strength there that's going to fill in.
I wouldn't disagree. The quality of the leadership at Microsoft, the bench, has been amazing for a long time. And I think it's also great that some women are really playing hugely important roles now at Windows, which I think a lot of people are happy to see because they're obviously talented and they happen to be women, which is nice. So we're really out of time, but I wanted to, the last thing, global and the developing world's importance to what you're doing. Just quickly talk about that, because we're Americans out of the US. How do you think about that?
Well, if you look at the growth of hardware, the fastest growing markets are the emerging markets. You take China. China passed the U.S. in terms of PCs about 2 years ago, and in phones, I don't remember how many years ago. You go to India, you go to Africa now is a very quickly emerging nation in terms of the use of digital technology. So I think as a developer or as a producer of both software and hardware, you need to be thinking globally and not just locally. And we try and build platforms that work everywhere. If you develop for Windows, it's going to work in 200 different countries.
Yeah, and your global presence is clearly an asset for a developer working with you, given that reality.
No, that's right. And here in France, they're opening up a shared workspace. They have camps that we run all the time. I could say the same thing when I go to Africa. I can say the same thing when I go to Brazil, to Portugal. And so one of the things we focus on is enabling, I'll say, the digital world or any term you want to use globally, and not just in sort of the U.S. or Europe or Latin America or any part of the continent of the world we're trying to enable.
Yeah, China. I've been to China with your executives. It's incredible the position you have in so many places. You're a truly global company. You're still powering forward.
And innovating, that's the key.
And they got a good guy running developer relations now, so good for you.
Thank you.
We've got to run, but thank you so much.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
I think we're out of time.
Yes,
we're seriously out of time.
We're seriously out of time.
Thank you all.